Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. Which is What If Naruto and Ino Get Arranged Married, Naruto x Ino Part -3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. That night, instead on having the traditional S*X, they decided, since they had so many emotional roller coasters, just to sleep together with no say X. They did sleep like they did the night before, but this time Ino was on the right, Tenten on the left and Yukie on top, since she would not be able to sleep on her stomach in the near future. The next day Yukie returned to teaching and Iruka helped her learn the proper evacuation routine for the coming war. A new surprise came in that was not expected or welcomed. A team from Iwa and from Cloud appeared and requested to enter the Chunin exams. The Hyuga and Kazama family and most of the council was not happy, but the Hokage could not turn them down because the Fire Lord approved it. He did, however, since he had more shinobi since Root was disbanded, put ABNU on each member of the Kazama family and guarding the Hyuga compound and on both teams. The Hokage quickly ordered everyone who had attended the wedding not to tell anyone until after they left. He ordered that all Hyuga who exited the house had to have at least 10 members as security. Kakashi had ordered a team meeting. He was surprisingly on time and had a quick message: all missions have been cancelled and I have nominated you all for the Chunin exams. It's in 3 days, so get ready, and then he left. Sasuke started to walk off and Sakura followed Naruto. After they got out of sight of him, Sakura said, "I am scared of him now." Naruto sighed and said, "I am sorry for that, but I had to warn you all." Sakura said, "It's alright. I just don't know what to do." Naruto said, "So how's the training coming?" Sakura smiled and said, "Tsunade-sensei has taught me a lot about Medicane and she has finally gotten over her fear of blood." Naruto said, "Really? How did that happen?" Sakura said, "Tsunade said when her and Jiraiya spent the theater wedding night, when she took her cloths off he had a massive nosebleed and sprayed her with it and she became so pissed that she beat him to the ground for ruining the moment." Naruto started laughing and said, "What about the training you have been doing with Tsubasa?" Sakura said, "I know the Kirigakure no Jutsu, hiding mist technique, Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, water doppelganger, and the Suiro no Jutsu, water prison technique. What about the training you have been doing with Tenten and Ino?" Naruto said, "Tenten has been learning Earth Jutsu. She learned Doden, Ritsudo Tensho Earth Release, Split Earth Turn Around Palm Doden, Doryuheki Earth Release Wall, and she also has been learning to use the Raijin. Tsunade gave it to her yesterday after the wedding, so she only tried it for a few minutes. I want to teach her Kijibunshin, but she does not have enough chakra yet. As for Ino, she has been doing okay. She has already got the tiger fighting style from the process and about 60 jutsu she can use. She has mostly been learning medical jutsu and is working on Kijibunshin. I have been working on my family scrolls and the third gave me the last of my inheritance finally." Sakura said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" Naruto smiled and said, "The same damn thing I stole and learned Kijibunshin off of. The Forbidden Scroll." Sakura stopped and looked at him and said, "How the hell did you get that in the first place?" Naruto smiled and said, "Sexy no jutsu. The old man is a pervert. The only men to not fall to that jutsu are the gay ones. You know, that reminds me. With everything that's happened I have not befriended Konohamaru yet. If I don't teach him sexy no jutsu he won't make his own jutsu." Sakura said, "You are not going to teach that kid that jutsu?" Naruto smiled and said, "You're right, I won't. I still need to befriend. Help, someone help, they're going to kill him." Naruto and Sakura heard someone screaming. They both took off toward the screams and found Konohamaru in the air being held by an Iwa nin in a gray suit and a scar across his face, and Udon and Moegi on the ground, crying. Naruto said, "Drop the kid." The nin said, "Why should I listen to you?" The nin said as he looked at Naruto. Naruto channeled his demon chakra into his eyes and they turned red and he unleashed a small amount of killer intent and said, "Release the kid. You won't like it if I ask again." A boy with green hair and pink eyes in an Iwa outfit appeared beside the first boy and said, "Archon, release the kid now." Archon looked at the guy boy beside him and said, "I don't take orders from you, demon." A voice from above them said, "Then perhaps you will take orders from me." Naruto looked up and saw a girl with brownish blonde hair and purple eyes wearing a cloud headband and a blue battle outfit. She jumped down and said, "Release the kid or I will kill you." Naruto leaned over to Sakura and said, "When I replace the kid, take them to my home and tell Ino to get here fast." Sakura nodded and a moment later Konohamaru was beside Sakura and another was still being held. Sakura grabbed him and the other two kids and ran off while everyone was distracted. After they were gone, Naruto snapped his fingers and the Konohamaru in Archon's hand blew up into flames and smoke. Everyone's attention was diverted and Naruto said, "So let me see if I can guess who you are. The idiot who just played with a firecracker is named Archon. The boy with green hair is most likely Sanrei, the vessel for Yonbi. The young lady there is Yugito, the vessel for Sibi." Yugito said, "Nibi actually." Naruto said, "Ask the demon, it's Sibi, Nibi, her sister is in the other dimension now." Yugito put her hand to her head and a moment later she started to gather chakra and said, "Tell me how you know this." Ino landed beside Naruto and said, "So who are the guests?" Naruto said, "Sibi and Yonbi." Ino nodded and said, "I see why you wanted me here." Archon said, "Who the hell are you and what is going on here?" Naruto said, "Go home kitty, the big dogs are talking." Archon started to attack Naruto but stopped when he sensed something. Just then a group of 4 ABNU appeared and the one in a dragon mask said, "What is going on here?" Naruto said, "Just a community meeting with my kind. The guy with the scar just along for the ride." The dragon ABNU said, "Just remember no fighting until the Chunin exams or you will have to leave the village," and they all disappeared and he went to inform the Hokage. Naruto sighed and said, "Want some ramen? It shuts the guys inside up because they love the stuff." Sanrei said, "How do you know so much about us and them?" Naruto said, "Well lizard, you should know not to mess with a fox. And cat, your sister said hello," and he walked off with Ino toward Ichiraku. Yugito started walking behind them and Sanrei also started but Archon stopped him and said, "Where do you think you're going?" Sanrei said, "I am going for answers. Like you said, I don't take orders from you," and he walked after them. Archon turned and went toward his hotel and though we will see about that demon. I bet Master Zetsu would like to know about all these demons here. Naruto sat down in one of the corner booths near the back with Ino beside him. Ichiraku had grown a lot lately thanks to a nice donation from the Kazama family for years of service to Thier family. They now had air conditioning and several tables and booths. A few moments later Yugito and Sanrei sat across from them and Ayame walked up and said, "What can I get you?" Naruto said, 40 bowls of the supreme for all of us." Ayame nodded and left. They sat in silence for 5 minutes when Ayame returned with the food. Naruto paid for it and said, "Can we have the privacy screen?" Ayame nodded and Ino went through some hand seals and said, "It okay to talk now?" Naruto quickly ate a bowl and said, "So you want to know how I know about you, right?" Both of them nodded and kept a hand on their weapon pouches. Naruto said, "You really should lighten us and eat. It's good food and your demons will mellow out for a little bit. They will be scared when I get serious." Sanrei said, "Yonbi is not scared of anything." Naruto smiled and said, "Not even Kyuubi." Both of them were stuck in the spot because of the killer intent coming off of Naruto. Naruto stopped and said, "I take it I have your undivided attention now." They both nodded and Naruto said, "Allow me to introduce myself and don't get exited when I do or I will kill you. My birth name is Naruto Kazama, son of the Yellow Flash, but I am known as the vessel of Kyuubi no Kitsune. I have all of the old one's power and he ceased to exist in the world. He along with Nibi are in Makai. That is how I knew you contain Sibi. As for how I know your names is because I have been keeping tabs on a group called Akatsuki. They are watching you. They are getting ready to target all the tailed beasts so they can free the Yoroi Sasori body armor scorpion. Ask you demons who that is." He waited a few minutes as he and Ino ate. Ino said, "Did it always take you this long to talk to Kyuubi?" Naruto said, "Sometimes. I figure the demons are still swearing about not killing that creature when they had a chance." Yugito said, "I talked with Sibi and she says for me to listen to you." Naruto said, "Sanrei is still talking so eat something while we wait." Yugito played with the ramen a moment and finally ate one bite like it was poison. The next thing anyone knew the bowls were being cleaned out. Naruto said, "Ino dear, can you go get about 15 more bowls?" Ino smiled and said as she got up and left. As Ino left Yugito said, "Why does she smell like cats?" Naruto said, "Perhaps I might tail you sometime." Sanrei blinked and looked at the table and said, "I can't believe you ate all of that." Naruto said, "Me and Ino only had 20 bowls total. Yugito here ate the rest." Ino came back and just sat the ramen on the table and Yugito dove for another bowl. Sanrei said, "Is that stuff really that good?" Yugito said, "It's so good Sibi is purring. She never purrs." Sanrei took a bowl and slowly took a bite. Naruto and Ino scooted as far away from the table as possible as the two fought to get at the food. Ino said, I thought you were bad. Naruto said, I did also. This is crazy. After the two finished, Naruto said, I guess you liked it, huh? The two nodded with smiles on their face. Naruto sighed and said, okay, here's the deal. I don't trust either of you, but I have no choice. If that group gets their hands on you and the rest the world is screwed. I have already taken care of Shukaku. I want both of your words and that of your demons. You will do what I tell you. Sanrei said, why should I listen to you? My mission is to kill you. Naruto said, either you listen to me or you are on your own. Agents Itachi Uchiha of the Leaf, Kisame Hoshigaki of the Mist, Deidara of the Rock, Zetsu of the Grass, Hidan of the Rain, Kakuzu of the Waterfall, Tobi, Sasori of the Red Sand of Suna, and possibly Orochimaru of the Sannin if I keep fucking with his plans. They both paled and Naruto said, I take it you know of these men. There are two other members but I can't get any real data on them. They are all members of this group and will be coming after you. I can give you a shot at beating them, but I warn you. You try messing with me, my family, friends or village in any way, I will kill you. Sanrei got up and said, I don't care what you say, I am not doing what you want, son of Yondaime. As he was leaving, Naruto said, you're a dead man walking. If I encounter you, I will kill you to save the rest of the world from those men getting your power. If you do anything to the ones I warned you about, I will make it extremely painful. Sanrei turned and said, so be it. When I see you, Aegean, I will kill you. Yugito said, what do you want me to do? Naruto said, what was your life like in Cloud? Yugito said, rough. My father is the Raikage. He took over after the last one took his life after the Hyuga incident. Naruto said, truthfully, do you have any plans or hopes of getting any Hyugas or Their eyes? Yugito said, actually no. My mission here was two-part. One was to show the Leaf the strength of Cloud. The second is, we have heard about you. My sensei has in her possession a proposal for a political marriage. My father fears for my safety in our village because someone has been causing trouble and exposed what I am. Naruto said, would it be possible to bring that proposal to the Hokage's office in 1 hour? Yugito said, yes, and got up and left. Naruto sighed and muttered, troublesome. On some hill Shikamaru sneezes. Ino looked at Naruto and said, what are you thinking, Naruto? Naruto said, I am thinking about your stepsister. I don't want them to get her and I am just researching options to keep her safe from them. Ino said, you know I never thought of it like that, but what about the marriage thing? Naruto said, I don't know. I want to decide. If it is to work, then all of my wives have to agree. I don't make a decision like this without each of yours consent. I am just curious about what the Raikage is offering. Ino nodded and said, in that case I will get the others and meet you there. Naruto said, get Mom, Granny, and Erozanin also. I have to see Hiyashi. Ino stopped and said, what are you going to see the Hyugas for? Naruto said, if anyone will throw a monkey wrench in this, he will. I want him on my side. Ino nodded and left and Naruto went toward the Hyuga compound. When Naruto got there, 10 branch members and 4 ABNU were at the main gates. A branch member said, state your name and reason for being here. Naruto said, Naruto Kazama, requesting an audience with the head of the clan Hiyashi Hyuga. A branch member left and returned and said, follow me. Naruto walked in and was led to the council chamber where Hiyashi and the rest of the council was. Naruto walked to the middle of the floor and waited for permission to speak. Hiyashi had his Byakugan on, looking at him, and Naruto flashed a little demon chakra and said, only I can have red demon chakra, so you know it's me. Hiyashi said, what do we have the honor of a Kazama clan member here today? Naruto said, I am aware of the history of your clan and the Cloud Village. I came here to discuss 3 things. Hiyashi nodded and said, what is the first thing? Naruto said, I have a scroll with a seal I would like to give to you as a peace offering. It is better than the current seal you have on your branch members and can be put on all Hyugas. It will make it impossible for anyone to steal your family's secret through breeding, removal or death. Murmurs went through the council and one member said, why would you want to interfere with our clan traditions in the first place? Naruto said, it is common knowledge throughout many villages and our own the branch family feels like they are slaves and they do not care to protect the main family as well as they could. I would offer this because I hate the curse of people with seals. My own existence before my family returned is proof of what seals do to people. Hiyashi said, you said a moment ago that they could not get it even through breeding. How can you be sure? Naruto said, The seal is designed that all children born from parents who have the seal won't be able to use their bloodline for 5 years. If the seal is not placed on them during that time, their bloodline will be sealed forever. It changes the cell structure for bloodlines. It is designed where if the eye is removed or death, the eyes will automatically destroy themselves. In other words, your family members will go from not wanting the seal to wanting it and safely securing your bloodline forever. Any child born outside the clan's control by the age of 5 won't be able to get their bloodline, making it where you don't have to worry about that risk as you do know. Hiyash said, very well, what is the second request? Naruto said, I had a interesting run it with one of the teams from Iowa. I was able to get some information from him. His current mission is to kill me during the Chunin exams. I am not worried about it, but it does state they still hold a grudge against my family. If they start anything, I have mastered both my father's signature jutsu and I will re-educate them if needed. That is not what I thought you would like to know. During the time I was getting my info, a member of the Cloud team got into our little discussion and found out her current mission. I have a meeting with the Cloud team member in less than an hour in the Hokage's office. She is the daughter of the current Raikage that took over after the Cloud incident. Hiyash said, that is interesting. What is it she wants to see you about? Naruto said, a possible political marriage. A member of the council said, who is the arrangement with? Naruto said, she claims it is between her and the heir to the Kazama clan. In other words, me. Hiyash said, so what do you want from us? Naruto said, I need a biased opinion at this meeting. I figured with things the way they are between Cloud and Leaf and your clan's views on the matter, no one else can be more biased than you. I request your person presence, Hiyash. If the proposal is half as good as I am expecting, the Hyuga clan opinion will be the one the council will listen to the most. I don't want anyone to say I am keeping secrets from the council on this matter. I know you will want your own security for it, and that brings me to my third request. If you agree to come and voice your opinion of the proposal, I want any guards you bring to remain silent about everything they hear and see. They must not also speak while in the meeting. Hiyash said, very well, I accept your proposal and your peace offering. I will tell you know that I will have a seal master check out the work, and if it does what you claim, we shall start using it. I will meet you there shortly. Naruto bowed and flamed Shushin to the Hokage's office. When Naruto appeared, the Hokage was finishing his paperwork and said, so I hear you had a little meeting with Iwa. What do I owe the pleasure of this meeting? Naruto said, I came to inform you that we have 2 additional vessels in town now. One is from Iwa and his mission is to kill me. The other is from Cloud and her mission is to marry me. She will be here shortly with a proposal for a political marriage. My family as well as Hiyash will be here also for the meeting. I knew if this proposal was to work I would need the Hyuga's backing. But I won't accept it without my wives, okay? The third said, you truly live up to your nickname. The number 1 hyperactive knucklehead surprise ninja. So tell me, how is things coming with the scroll? Naruto said, I got most of the jutsu off of it, but they are last resorts. I memorized the demonic soul seal Fuinjutsu Shiki Fujin as a last resort. The third nodded and a knock was heard. Enter. In walked Hiyash and the entire Kazama clan with 4 Hyuga bodyguards. Naruto walked over and shook hands with Hiyash and patted him on the back and said, thanks for agreeing. Naruto then turned to his family and said, did Ino tell you what this is about? They all nodded. A few minutes later another knock was heard. After the third said enter, Yugito walked in with her sensei. The sensei bowed and said, my name is Mela. I am Yugito sensei and her temporary guardian. I am only her as an escort and her safety. The third said, you may sit in the chair to the right of you. Mela sat and crossed her arm. Naruto said, so do you have the proposal? Yugito said, yes, but it is sealed with a blood seal. I must cut my finger, so I am not trying to attack. And she reached into her kunia belt and took a kunia and cut her finger before dropping a few drops on the seal, opening the scroll and putting the kunia back. Yugito then handed it to the Hokage. The Hokage said, it says, I Jijin Outdower, the Yondaime Raikage of the Hidden Cloud Village, wish to offer a political marriage proposal to the heir of the Kazama clan. I wish to correct the idiotic mistakes of my predecessor. I wish for this proposal to be shared with the Hyuga clan for the actions taken by my country. I offer my only daughter Yugito as well as the Hidden Cloud Village secret scroll in 10 jutsu, 1S, 1A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E ranked jutsu from our village in the deal. Yugito has the scrolls but require her blood and a special jutsu to open them, and she cannot give them until after the wedding. What I want in return is protection for my daughter. I have heard of the condition the Kazama heir is in and my daughter has the same. She contains Nibby, the two-tailed cat. Unlike you vessel, she had the Nibby sealed in her by a rival of mine for the title of Cage before he was killed. He wanted to make my people hate me for protecting her. I may be a proud man, but I am a father first. I request her secret try to be protected, but if it gets out, please protect her. The heir to the man who was my rival discovered his father's journal and has started a campaign to try and remove me from office by using my daughter's condition against me. I wish for you to answer before the end of the Chunin exam. If you accept, I ask that she not return for her safety. I will also offer a free sample of information. I have information that the Sound Village is planning on attacking you during the Chunin exam. If you accept this deal, her sensei has a signed non-aggression treaty between our countries. Signed, Jijin Outdower, the Yondaime Raikage of the Hidden Cloud Village. The third rolled up the scroll and said, Yugito and Mela, could you please wait in the lobby and let us discuss this in private? They both nodded and left. Hiyash said, that is not what I expected, and what of the information about an attack? It could be a trick. Naruto said, it's no trick, we already got information about it and discovered Orochimaru is the Otokage of Sound. He is coming for 3 reasons. 1. The destruction of Th Leaf, 2. The death of the third, and 3. The Sharingan. He is planning on either recruiting or abducting Sasuke. Hiyash said, if you have all this information, why have the council not been informed? We have to protect the Sharingan. The third said, we have already discovered 22 spies for him and have been leaking false information. The council was not informed because we know of one on the council now. There may be others. As for protecting Sasuke, we have a trap sat inside the tower for him if he shows. As for the Forest of Death, we have 10 teams of ABNU patrolling the area undercover to try and protect him, plus Naruto will hopefully be able to stall him long enough for them to attack. Hiyash said, I understand, but what about the individual clans? Naruto said, we know of one member of your own council reporting to him. Hiyash was shocked. He had to sit down and said, do you have any proof? Jiraiya pulled out a file and read from it, Hyuga, Baraban, cited on the nights of June 5 and 9 and 14, describing the debates about clan head and which members of the clan can be caught or captured on which dates. Hiyash will be taking his yearly sabbatical to the Fire Lords to resign the annual bloodline treaty. When he is gone, the youngest daughter of the main Hyuga branch will be left behind for training from the council. She can be captured during her lunch period because she eats alone in an abandoned classroom because she is antisocial. She can be captured at this time. When Hiyash heard this, he said, the only people who knew I was planning on leaving her here was the council. I believe you. Just then a branch member went to attack Hiyash from behind. Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash and reappeared behind Hiyash with a kunai in his hand and stabbed the branch member in the stomach before chopping him on the neck, knocking him out. Tsunade walked over and treated him, and an ABNU who was called took him to Ibiki. Hiyash was shocked and Naruto said, that's one of the reasons we designed that seal for you. Anyone from the council could force or convince a branch member to do something like this because of the damn cage bird seal. Anyways, we are getting off track. What do we want to do about this? Hiyash said, so you really can perform it. I assume you places a marker on me when we shook hands earlier. Naruto nodded and Hiyash continued, I think it is worth the deal. She would have to become a leaf nin and act accordingly. I request that she be put on restriction where she can't come near the Hyuga compound for 1 year without written request for her to be there. If after that year she does not do anything that would be considered dangerous, then I have no problem with it. Naruto said, is that what you will say if the council brings this up? Hiyash said, yes. Naruto sighed and said, now all we need is the verdict from my wives. Hiyash raised an eyebrow and said, wives? I thought that you were not going to be married until after the exams. Naruto said, we wanted it to be private for close friends and family. Your daughter and nephew were at the ceremony, but with the Iwa Nins showing up, the Hokage put a gag order on all news about it for their protection. Hiyash said, I understand and I will keep it secret. A sign of trust between our clans. Naruto nodded and said, so what do you think? Ino said, I say we give her a test. Say, she has to show us her colors during the exams. If she does not do anything to any one of our 3 teams during the 2 part of the exam besides maybe aiding, I say yes. Tenten said, I agree. Yukie said, well, I don't see any problem with it. I mean, we all knew that there would be another woman sooner or later to appease the council, so let's give her a shot. If not, we can maybe get a consolation prize. The third nodded and signaled for them to come back in. When they did, the third said, we have decided to give you a test. Between now and the end of the Chunin exam you must not harm any Leaf Shinobi outside registered matches. If your team encounter any of the 3 Leaf teams that Naruto, Ino, or Tenten here are on you can only eye them. Any others are open during the forest exam. Do you agree with the terms? If the attack does occur during the exam you are to aid the Leaf any way you can. Yugito said, I agree. The third smiled and said, if all goes well, welcome to the Leaf. After the third said that Yugito smiled and said, thank you. I wish to let you know that my teammates don't know about this because one of them is best friends with the man my father mentioned. He asked my sensei and I to keep quiet on this until he made the official announcement after everything was agreed on so their actions don't speak for him or me. Hiyashi said, I will make sure to mention that if either of your teammates try anything or plan something, please inform the Hokage immediately. Yugito nodded and she turned to Naruto, Ino, Yukie, and Tenten and said, I hope we can meet Aegean and get to know each other better before we get married. I assume that with the matching rings you have on that you are all fiancé to Naruto. Naruto said, yes. Yugito said, can we all go get some ramen to talk and get to know each other? Naruto and Ino burst out laughing. Everyone looked at her and Naruto said, when I met her and those 2 Iwa nins, one of them is the vessel for Yonbi, I introduced them to ramen and what I found is still true. Demons love ramen. Yugito her had close to 30 bowls. Hokage-sama, I request that the Rookie 9 and Guys team be brought up to speed on this new info. I don't want any of our friends hurt with a run-in with those Iwa nin. The Hokage said, I will inform their senseis for you. If that is all, you are dismissed. My secretary has got more paperwork for me. Sigh, sometimes I think I am cursed. Everyone started to walk out and Jiraiya said, so you got another girl for your harem. You are truly my successor. Bam, Jiraiya was sent sailing by Tsunade Fist. Tsunade said, Naruto, try not to be like him, please. You will live longer. And so the group of Naruto, Yugito, Yukie, Ino, and Tenten went to get some ramen. Tsunade and Shizune went home and Mela went back to check on her team. When the group got there Naruto saw Sakura and someone who looked like Lee except instead of green spandex he had on an outfit that made him look like Kakashi but all black, and his eyebrows had been severely trimmed and had an army haircut. Naruto said, Sakura, how are you doing and is that Lee? Sakura said, yes it's Lee. He met the conditions for us to go out on a date. What are you up to? Naruto said, had a meeting with the Hokage. The lady over there with the girls over there is Yugito. Her father is the Raikage and is here for the exams and possible political marriage. Lee said, who would she be marrying? Naruto said, guess. In a deadpan way. Lee said, is it Sasuke Uchiha, or a member of the Hyuga clan? If it is someone would kill her. Naruto said, no Lee. It's me. She has to pass a test to show her colors first though. Anyways enjoy your date you two. Ow before I forget, remember the warning I gave you about Gaara? They both nodded and Naruto said, the team from I will look out for. One of them is a vessel like I was and is looking to kill me. He may target any of you just to get revenge for his country for what my dad did to them during the war. Sakura said, we understand. Right Lee. Lee nodded and Naruto told them bye and returned to his girls. Sakura sighed and Lee looked at her and said, what's wrong Sakura? Sakura said, I am worried about Naruto. Lee went and said, why? Sakura said, after I first learned about Ino and Naruto before the other day, Ino told me about a bunch of stuff that happened to him and her in their other lives. Naruto had a terrible life because of his burden and then for him to go to such extremes to change it. I don't know how he can stand it. If it was me I would have just died. Lee said, Naruto truly is the power of. Sakura interrupted him and said, Lee, what did I tell you about the power of youth when I am with you? Lee looked down and said, sorry Sakura. I guess I can get excited. Sakura said, I know, I just want you to work on that excitement to turn it down so we won't attract people's attention and enjoy yourselves. Lee said, people's attention will still be on us as long as your beauty remains. Sakura blushed. Sakura said, Lee, quite exaggerating. Lee said, I am not. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Sakura blushed Aegean and grabbed his hand slowly and said, thank you Lee-kun. You feel like going for a walk now. Lee said, sure, anything for you my beautiful cherry blossom. Ino smiled as they left and said, the blossom really does bloom twice. Everyone looked at her strangely but when Naruto saw what Ino was looking at he smiled and said, yeah it does. Anyway, so tell us more about yourself. Meanwhile at the Hokage's office. The senseis had all arrived except Kakashi, and the third said, if he is not here in the next 30 seconds I will have Tsunade use him as a practice dummy for her new and improved 100,000 years of pain. Everyone looked sheepish and Kakashi finally arrived with 6 seconds to spare. The third said, thank you for coming. I call you here because of some new info that has changed. Asuma said, what now? The third said, both the IWA team and Cloud team are after Naruto for different reasons. A girl from Cloud is here for a possible political marriage with him and it is a pretty good deal. Her name is Yugito and she is the only daughter of the current Raikage. He is offering us 10 jutsu as well as Their Forbidden Scroll and a non-aggression treaty. She is also the vessel to Nibi. Kurenai said, though Ino is the new Nibi. The third said, she is. That means it's Sibi, Nibi's sister. However, only those of us who know the truth actually know that, so don't slip up. The only one on her team that knows about her potential marriage is her sensei. The rest of the team might be hostile, even to her, so advise your team accordingly. Kakashi said, what about the Iwa team? The third sighed and said, it's just like we thought. They want Naruto head. However, it gets much worse. One of their members is also a vessel. He contains the Yonbi. Guy said, so we have 3 vessel and 2 demons, no offense meant. Correct. The third said, no. Before you arrived I had a scroll made out of sand appear on my desk that after I read it disappeared. Gaara said he is fully demon now like Naruto said and says thank you for letting him sleep. So we have 2 vessels and 3 demons. However, he also said his father has already been replaced but they are keeping quiet about it. Orochimaru is in the village now. Kakashi said, things keep getting better and better. What are the Hyuga's position on the possible marriage? The third said, Naruto outplayed them and used his knowledge and Jiraiya informants to earn Hiya's respect and he agreed to the proposal if she would be on a temp probation. She can't go near the Hyuga compound for 1 year without a written request by someone. Kurenai said, that's not too bad. The third nodded and said, this might be the last time before the big meeting that we have to talk, so make sure your teams are ready for the test and be advised to beware of the Iwa team. Everyone nodded and left. Asuma appeared at a dango stand with Kurenai and said, how do you feel? Kurenai said, I am starting to get the morning sickness but Tsunade gave me something for it so I should be fine. Asuma smiled and said, so, you going to be ready for this? Kurenai said, I am a ninja, don't baby me. I will be fine, I still am in the first trimester and will be then. Asuma said, just be careful, if not for my sake then the little ones. Kurenai sighed and said, fine, I won't overdo it but you better live through this to rub my feet and back for me. Asuma smiled and put his cigarette out and said, is that a request? Kurenai said, no, that's an order and quit smoking. It's not healthy for me and the baby. Asuma sighed and pulled out his cigs and threw them in the trash and said, the things I do for the woman I love. Kurenai said, those are not the only things you will do, and she leaned over and kissed him passionately. Paid for their usual order and left for Kurenai apartment. The next couple of days flew by. The only major change came when the Hyuga family, after Ibiki released his prisoner and his report, had a massive change in power. Hiyashi disbanded the council after he discovered 2 members of the council had helped in the attempted assassination on his life. He also had the seal Naruto gave them checked out and put on all Hyugas except the 2 who tried to kill him. They had the cage bird seal put on. Hiyashi also removed the old ones and united his family like he actually wanted to do. After he freed Neji he gave him the scroll from his father and that day changed Neji's life forever. Neji actually started to change his views and since there was no main family anymore his hate started to go away and his view of Hinata started to change. Hiyashi also announced that new traditions would be started to form a new Hyuga family. Team 7 was currently on the 2nd floor watching as Ali gets knocked away by 2 other test takers, we all know who. Sasuke goes though the whole dropped the genjutsu and said, you saw it first Sakura. Sakura said, of course I saw it. I was keeping quit to weed out the weaker opponents like you should have Sasuke. Everyone who knew the truth snickered at this and Sasuke crossed his arms in HMPED as he walked toward the stairs. One of the guys that stopped everyone said, just cause you saw through it does not mean you can get by me. Sasuke went to kick the guy as he went to punch Sasuke. Neji who had the new Hyuga seal on and actually smiling held Lee back. Right when they were about to hit a rock wall appear between them causing the guy to hurt his hand and Sasuke got a broke little toe. He tried to act cool but everyone could tell he was hurt. He turned to look at the Iwa team and saw one of them release the last seal he had and the wall crumbled. Sasuke said, how dare you interfere? The Iowa nin with green hair said, I was watching out for my own interest Uchiha. Sasuke said, what interest would that be? Sanrei said, I was making sure you did not get your team disqualified before the exams. My personal interest is on your team. Sasuke said, so you want to fight me because you want to test yourself against the best. Sanrei said, why would I care about the weak Uchiha when my target is the son of the Yodime Hokage? My team is only here to see how the mighty leaf has fallen and will fall to the true strength of Iowa. Sasuke said, parents don't mean anything. Why would you care about the dead last of the academy anyways? Archon said, the same might be said about you. As far as I can tell you claim to be an Uchiha but you have not even awakened your pathetic bloodline yet and you are trying to get credit for your parents' name. Everyone in the room snickered at this. Sasuke charged at them and was stopped by a wall of sand that rose up right in front of him and caused him to break his nose. Sasuke fell on his butt and held his nose and said, okay, who is the SS that went and ruined the beauty of an Uchiha? A tall girl with a fan on her back said, damn, you are shallow. I can't believe you could not even attack or defend yourself properly. I am starting to question if you are a man. Sasuke started fuming and said, a man, you are questioning if I am a man. I will show you Sut. I shall show all you bitches what I am. I am the master of S*X. The king of all that is SXUAL. If it's got a hole I will. Suddenly he is stoked and turned to Hinata and said, Hinata, it's me Ino. He was scaring Naruto Aegean. Please Jiyuken his nuts for me. Hinata smiled and stepped forward but Neji said, Hinata-sama, you should not get yourself worked up over trash like him. I will do it. And he walked over and got into position and said, release the jutsu. Ino did and when Sasuke started to fall Neji nailed him 3 times with the gentle fist. Gaara took the time after that to grab Sasuke in his sand and picked him up in the air and threw him at a wall with a sickening crunch sound. Several ribs were broken. Gaara said, never call my sister a Sut-Aegean or I will kill you. Every guy except Neji and Naruto was holding themselves. Naruto was being held by Tenten who was babbing him because memories of snow started to return. Sakura sighed and went through some hand seals and shut down the pain receptors in his spine. She said, well, let's get the test started before the pain returns. I want to pass this test. She then picked Sasuke up over her shoulder and carried him to the test room. When they got outside the door all the senseis were there and Kakashi said, what happened to Naruto and Sasuke? Sakura said, relapse of Snow Country. Kakashi said, he did not try to fuck anyone Aegean did he? Sakura said, I don't think he will ever do that Aegean. Kurenai said, why's that? Ino said, I took over his body for scaring Naruto and asked Hinata to Jiyuken his nuts for me. Neji said, she did not do it though. Kurenai let out the breath she had. Neji continued, I did it for her. Kakashi and Asuma covered themselves. Guy said, Neji, you need to quit doing that. That's the 3rd person you done that to. Tenten said, 3rd, Sasuke, that guy who had the Raijin sword and who else? Guy said, I was the unfortunate victim of that attack. Neji said, and the future is saved from the next generation of your offspring. Kakashi said, I see, what about the other damage to Sasuke? Ino said, he called Gaara's sister a sut and Gaara took offense. He is lucky to still be alive. Ino then sighed as she looked at Naruto and said, how long till the test starts? Kurenai said, about 30 minutes. Why? Ino said, Tenten, come with me. We need to help Naruto out of this Aegean. And she grabbed Naruto and led him down the hall with Tenten beside him. They stopped at a broom closet and went in. Everyone was looking at them go in and a few minutes later moaning was heard coming from the closet and Kiba said, am I the only one disturbed about this? Everyone's sweat dropped and waited, and waited, and waited. Finally the door opened up and Ino and Tenten walked out with smiles on, hair a mess, cloths wrinkled and walking with a little bit of a limp and Naruto walked out like nothing happened in a similar state. Kiba groaned and said, life is so not fair. Naruto walked up and said, so what did we miss? Everyone's sweat dropped. Kakashi said, I have got to know one thing Naruto. How can you please all these women at the same time? Kiba said, yeah man, tell us the secret. Ino and Tenten said at the same time dreamily, Kage Bunshin. Kiba not understanding said, so what if he makes a few clones, how can that help? Kakashi said, you don't understand. You have never seen Naruto go all out with his Kage Bunshin. Kurenai not following said, I don't understand either. Kakashi said, Naruto Kage Bunshin are different from normal. He does not have to tell them what to do. They already know everything he knows. It is not just a couple of clones either. Naruto when he trains, the smallest amount he makes is 1,000 of them. Kiba screamed, "You're telling us he could fuck 1,000 women at the same time and it would be nothing for him?" Kiba started bowing to Naruto and said, "You are a god." Everyone's sweat dropped and Sasuke finally woke up and said, "What happened? What about the test?" Everyone said, "Right." And the Genins entered the room. When they arrived they felt massive killer intent pointed at them. From now on killer internet will be key. Naruto smiled and released his own key. Several people passed out and a couple pissed themselves. Naruto then screamed, "We're the Rookie 9 and Gia's team and you mess with us and we will kick USS." A silver-haired Genin with a leaf headband came over and said, "Don't be so loud, you are making the leaf look bad." Sasuke said, "And who are you?" The man said, "My name is Kabuto and I came to help you all out since you are new." Naruto said, "We don't need your help Kabuto. Go slither back in the hole you crawled out of." Kabuto said, "Perhaps you don't speak for all of them, what was your name Aegean?" Naruto said, "If you want to call me something call me your death if you don't leave." "I don't trust you." Kabuto said, "Why? We never met before and all I am doing is offering to help give you some information on the competition." Naruto said, "If you had such good information then you should already know who I am without me giving you my name. Since you don't all the info you have are either lies to help you against us or truths that you should use for yourself. Since you seem to know so much that means you failed this test before and you're probably too weak to pass and decided to lie to help yourself." Kabuto was getting mad and Sasuke said, "Do you have information on individuals?" Kabuto smiled and said, "Yes, if you can describe them or point them out or their names I can." Sasuke said, "The guy with the gourd on his back from the sand, the guy from Iowa with green hair, the Hyuga behind me and Naruto Kazama," pointing to each person when he said it. Naruto cursed under his breath. Kabuto said, "Naruto Kazama, teammates Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. Missions history. Whoa, 1S rank mission, 2A rank missions, and 46D rank mission. Bloodline is the wood manipulation and is the vessel of the Kyuubi. Jutsu. Kage Bunshin. The rest of his jutsu have been sealed. The Hyuga is Hyuga-ne. Teammates Rock Lee and, oh this is interesting, Tenten-ka." Naruto snapped his fingers and Kabuto's entire deck caught on fire and he said, "You have too much information for a genin. Who are you really? Are you a spy?" Kabuto started to sweat and he said, "Of course I am not. I am a leaf genin like you." Naruto said, "It looks like the old blood is boiling. Perhaps you would like to test yourselves." Kabuto said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Naruto said, "Funny, I can tell one of your ancestors met a demon. Now I wonder which one would give that gift to your family. It's a shame that you're the last survivor." Kabuto was getting mad and said, "If you value your life and the wench I would stop now." Naruto said, "The only wench I see here is the one who smells of snakes and weasels. I guess the whale is from your family since it's in every one of your cells. The snake is just from recent contact so I guess you butt buddy like to play with you and snakes. Maybe making you a little puppet also. Or perhaps your previous master did that for you. You can tell you have been someone's toy for most of your life." Kabuto activated his Shozen Jutsu, Mystical Palm Technique, aka Chakra Scaples. He charged at Naruto and the rest of the Rookie 9 got in defense formation. Naruto ducked under the first swipe and put both his hands behind his back. Kabuto kept charging and trying to kill Naruto. Naruto would dodge every strike. Neji was getting ready to attack when Naruto said, "Stay out of this fight. The little puppet here is mine." Kabuto deactivated his chakra scapels because he could not concentrate on and grabs a kunai and drove it toward Naruto. Naruto smirked and dodged before creating 3 clones. He then stuck a hand out and Kabuto blade entered his hand and Naruto grabbed Kabuto hand that was holding the kunai. Naruto said, "Here is a little present for you." And he held out his hand and the 2 clones started gathering chakra in it. A massive ball of chakra started forming and changing shape. When the other 2 clones finished and puffed away the last clone snapped his finger and the ball of chakra and wind caught fire and Naruto plunged it into Kabuto's body as he screamed, "Kaden Fuden Race Shuriken." Kabuto screamed as it was slammed into his chest. The Naruto that was holding him replaced with the clone behind him before it was destroyed by the damage. Kabuto was in agonizing pain as his insides were grinded to dust and his body was consumed in flames. The fire finally reached the inside of his body where the wind had been forced and it was like a backdraft. Flames shot out of his mouth and his arms burned off his body. Finally Kabuto's body fell to the ground mutilated, burnt, and destroyed. Naruto then used Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, and destroyed the rest of the body, and then used Futon Daitapa Wind Release, Great Breakthrough though weakly, to blow the ashes away into nothingness. Ibiki and the other judges arrived, and Ibiki said, "What was that about?" Naruto said, "He attacked me with lethal force. I returned it." Ibiki said, "Anyone not agree with that?" Kabuto teammate said, "I do, he killed my teammate." Ibiki said, "Did your teammate attack him?" The guy said, "Yeah, but." Ibiki said, "Then get your SS out of here since you don't have a 3-man team anymore." It was self-defense. End of story. Now, everyone sit down and no more killing until you are told you can. And so the test started like last time. Ino used her jutsu to enter Naruto's body and gave him the answers. Enko threw a kunai at Naruto and his body reacted instantly and tilted his head to the side and it passed him by. Enko appeared behind him and said, "Good reflexes, kid. Perhaps I should take you home for the next 5 days and play with you." A grass nin appeared behind Enko with his tongue out and holding a Herkunia. Naruto grabbed the tongue and said, "I could always use a new belt," and he pulled out his sword. The grass nin tried to pull his tongue back, but Naruto had too good of a hold on it. Enko said, "Release the grass nin." Naruto said, "Sorry, but I am bounty hunting right now." Enko said, "What?" The grass nin said, "Let me go. I did not do anything, let me go, I did not do anything." Enko walked forward and reached for Naruto and he said, "How's the curse seal, Enko?" That stopped her in her tracks and she rubbed her neck and said, "How do you know about that?" Naruto said, "Release the disguise Orochimaru." The grass nin, who still had his tongue being held by Naruto, said, "Kuku, who did you know it was be, ha 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 ha, how did you know it was me?" Naruto said, "A, you smell like snakes. B, when I mentioned snakes to Kabuto before he attacked me, his eyes widened, and C, I sensed your chakra and knew the curse seal on Enko chakra. When I noticed they were the same, I realized it was you." Suddenly a scream of Zenkaha decapitating air wave, and Naruto took a swing at Orochimaru with his sword and severing his tongue and grabbing Enko out of the way. As they fell to the ground, they heard a scream. Naruto turned and looked and saw Orochimaru removing his mouth from Sasuke's neck. Naruto got up to charge at Orochimaru but was hit by a sound wave from Dosu. Orochimaru melted into the ground and the sound team bolted from the area trying to escape. A few moments later, ABNU who were inside the forest. Enko said, "Orochimaru was here. He's wounded right now but he just escaped." The team from sound aided him. "Follow them. I have to get the Uchiha to the hospital now." And she grabbed Sasuke and took off. Everyone was standing there looking at each other like, what the fuck should we do now? Naruto sighed and said, "I will get the Hokage and find out what now." And he burst into flames and disappeared. A team from Rain Country said, "What the hell was that?" Ino said, "That would be the #1 hyperactive Nuckhead surprise ninja." A few moments later the Hokage arrived with Naruto and said, "Because of the surprise appearance of an S-class missing nin in the exams, we will have a preliminary match for the second exam instead of a survival exam. The matches will be in the tower at the center of the forest tomorrow. There is to be no fighting until your match. It will be individual matches. They will be till you either kill or knock out your opponent gives up, or the ref declares a winner. Good luck and see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. And he left. Everyone went home or their hotels for the rest of the day to prepare for the fights. The next day when Naruto got to the tower, he was surprised to see the different people this time. There was the rookie 9+ guys team. Sasuke was there also and had the repression seal put on. There was the Sand Sibs, the IWA team, the Cloud team, and a Rain team. A total of 24 competitors. The Hokage arrived and said, "Our examiner for these matches has changed. The ref shall be Zabuza. I explained the rules yesterday and your names shall flash on the board. Let's get started." Zabuza walked to the ring and the screen started to flash. Kiba of the Leaf versus Hisaro of IWA. Kiba jumped down with Akamaru. Hisaro walked down dressed in standard ninja gray cloths and black hair. When they both got to the center, Zabuza started the fight. Kiba started to say something but Hisaro started going through handseal and said, "Doden, knockout punch," and a fist 5 feet wide came out of the ground directly in front of Kiba at high speed and hit him in the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. Kiba was out cold. Zabuza said, "Winner Hisaro." Sasuke was fuming. "Damn it, what do I have to do to activate my bloodline?" Naruto whistled and said to Ino and Tenten, who was beside him, "Remind me to freshen up on Doden Jutsu." Both of them nodded. Neji of the Leaf vs Leonio of the Cloud. Neji and Leonio both got into fighting stances and Zabuza said, fight. Leonio said, I dedicate this match to the former Raikage. I will do what he wanted to do, and charged Neji. Naruto said, he just signed his death warrant. Tenten said, why? Hinata said, the event that he was referring to was when they tried to kidnap me. Neji dad died to save my father's life. Down on the floor Neji had just used Hake Shokaden, Heavenly Spin, to knock Leonio into the air. When he landed Neji changed stances and Hinata gasped. Neji said, you are within my field of divination 16 trigrams 128 palm strike, and launched himself at the now standing Leonio. 2 palm, 4 palm, 8 palm, 16 palm, 32 palm, 62 palm, 128 palm, with the last strike hitting in the heart. Zabuza walked over and checked Leonio and said, winner Neji. After that Neji walked up and Naruto looked at Yugito and mouthed I am sorry. She smiled and mouthed it's okay, it's his own fault. Sasuke said, little touchy, aren't you Hyuga? Neji crossed his arms and said, go blow Itachi. Sasuke became pissed and said, that's it. The next person who insults my clan, me, or mentions my brother will die. Zabuza smirked and said, get Yuge SS down here Uchiha. Sasuke became pissed and jumped over the railing to charge Zabuza screaming, I will kill you and your little dog too. Show me what a big bad demon you are. You know I would like to see that big sword of yours. Zabuza sweat drop as he jumped away from Sasuke. As he was dodging he said, can I declare him unable to continue due to mental illness? The third said, sadly no. Zabuza said, can I kill him, as he dodges a fireball? Suddenly a lightning bolt hit Sasuke and he fell to the ground. He slowly gets up and smiles as he charges the guy who just hit him with that jutsu. His eyes change and his first comma appear as he tries to hit his enemy. Naruto sees this and said, damn it. Grand Master Thief is here now. Hey Zabuza, did you ever actually start the match? Everyone's sweat drops and Sasuke stops and said, what match? Sweat drops. Naruto pointed toward the board. Sasuke of the Leaf vs Dire of the Cloud. Zabuza said, begin. Sasuke dodges a leg sweep and kicks toward Dire's head. Dire rolls away and stops on his knees. Suddenly a whistle was heard and everyone looked at Sasuke as he started doing hand seals and said, my favorite, chestnuts roasting on an open fire style. Dragon Flame Jutsu Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu, and breathed out a stream of fire toward Dire that shapes itself into a dragon. Sakura said, Naruto, not that I mind but, why are you not freaking out right now about Sasuke slipping into Galand? Ino said, simple Sakura. Since we found that the best cure is for him to get laid I entered his mind when Sasuke started and we done it inside his head. Sakura said, but how do you have time to do it while we sat here and was it enjoyable? Ino said, for the first question. In his brain a minute out here can be a second to a day in there. Me and him once put an entire month's worth of training in one day in his mind. As for enjoyable, anything I feel while in his body actually happens to my body. That's why I have to make sure my body is protected and be careful. Sakura sweat drops and said, I never would have thought you could use that jutsu like that. Suddenly a scream of, ah, I am going to kill you. You grabbed my SS. Everyone's attention was drawn back to the ring. Dire started doing hand seals as Sasuke charged at him. Dire finished and shot a lightning bolt toward Sasuke and hit Sasuke in the legs as he dove for him. The strike caused Sasuke to start falling with the speed he had behind it went headfirst into Dire's stomach. Dire fell back from the blow with Sasuke falling with him right between Dire's legs. When they stopped Sasuke was directly over Dire's groin. Sasuke smiled as he leaned his head back and headbutted Dire in the nuts. With his head still there he said without looking up, surrender or I will bite. Zabuza announced, winner Sasuke. Hinata of the Leaf vs Shino of the Leaf. Hinata said, I quit. Zabuza said, winner Shino. Shino said, why did you do that? Hinata said, I am a close-range fighter. You are a range fighter. I would never be able to get close enough to attack. Unlucky draw for me. Shino nodded and said, perhaps you could help me train for the upcoming exams and battles on my weakness. Close-range attacks. Hinata smiled and said, I would like that. Gaara of the Sand vs Archon of IWA. Archon walked down and Gaara-san shushined down. Archon said, I have heard all about you Gaara. I will enjoy beating you demon boy. I heard all about the demon of the sand. Unable to be hurt, murderer, killer, butcher. I will enjoy when they get rid of you and your kind. Zabuza said, fight. Gaara-san shot forward and inked Archon body but not his head and said, "Who is it you are talking about? Would it be Akatsuki?" Archon said, "How do you know about them, demon?" Gaara said, "Are you a member of them?" Archon said, "Go back to hell, demon." Gaara crushed his right leg and said, "Who told you about me and how do you know them?" Archon said, "Fuck off." Gaara crushed his left leg and said, "Tell me or you will never know what it's like to be a man Aegean." Archon paled and said, "Master Zetsu told me. Now release me or I will kill you and your gay brother and whore of a sister you have." Gaara walked toward the balcony and said, "Call me what you want but never insult my family," and closed his hand as the sand covered Archon head, dessert funeral, and his body was crushed. Gaara released the sand and the body hit the ground in the shape of a ball. All bones had been crushed. Zabuza paled and said, "Winner Gaara. Lee of the Leaf versus Sakura of the Leaf." Sakura said, "I quit." Zabuza said, "Winner Lee." Naruto put his arm on Sakura's shoulder and said, "It okay. Bad draw." Sakura nodded and Lee came over and kissed her and whispered in her ear. Kankuro of the Sand versus Tamari of the Sand. Kankuro said, "I quit." Zabuza, "Winner Tamari." Shikamaru of the Leaf versus Rago of Rain. As soon as the match began it was over. Shikamaru started sending his shadow over and Rago tuned to his teammates to brag and got caught. Since he was facing away from Shikamaru, he walked right to the wall and headbutted it. Winner Shikamaru. Naruto of the Leaf versus Gando of Rain. Naruto flamed shushing to the ring and when Zabuza started the match Naruto released a massive ki and Gando passed out. Winner Naruto. Choji of the Leaf versus Tenten of the Leaf. The match started out as Choji tried to run over Tenten with his Nikuden Sensha meat tank. Tenten dodged and pulled out her weapon scrolls. She then performed her twin raising dragons and launched her weapons at him. Choji kept dodging the attack by running around the arena like a pinball. Tenten finally landed took out the Raijin. She activated it and got into a Kenjutsu position. Choji changed back to normal then performed the Buban Baika no Jutsu partial double size technique and enlarged his arms and hands. Tenten dodged under the first strike from his left arm and moved in for a finishing blow. Choji saw her coming and drawed his right back. He started to swing forward and stopped an inch from her face. The Raijin was an inch from his neck. Zabuza said, "Stop the match." Right before that, they both looked at him and he said, "Double victory. If either of you finish the attack you finish yourself. No winner." Tenten smiled and shook hands with Choji. Sanray of Iwa versus Aragon of the Rain. Sanray went to the errant and Aragon jumped over the railing. Aragon said, "You won't be able to get near me. My attack never misses." He then pulled out a metal umbrella of his back. Sanray said, "How can you hit what you cannot see?" He then went through some hand seals and waited. Zabuza said begin and Sanray made one last seal and disappeared. Aragon threw his umbrella in the air and jumped onto a wall to wait. He then went though some hand signs and his umbrella that was still in the air shot out thousands of needles. He started to laugh as the needles covered the arena floor and the area where they were not was getting smaller. When it got to about a 5-foot circle Sanray appeared. Aragon said, "This is the end," and hundreds more needles fell toward Sanray. Sanray smiled and said, "You're right. For you." And he went through seals faster than anyone could see and suddenly he was on the wall and Aragon was in the circle and he was killed by his own attack. Ino versus Yugito. Every person has a battle between a supposed equal. For the first time in her life Ino felt that this was it. Naruto was white as a ghost. Ino looked at him and saw the look of fear in his eyes. He sighed and said, "No matter what Ino. I love you. Do what you feel is right for you. Even if you have to reveal that." Ino nodded and started walking toward the arena. Yugito had already walked to the floor. Zabuza felt the tension rolling of this pair. Yugito did not know why but she felt like she was getting ready to fight a part of herself. Ino felt the same way. Zabuza said, "Begin," and jumped back. Yugito said, "So how do you want to do this? Ninjutsu, Genjutsu, Taijutsu?" Ino said, "I want to see where I truly rank no in skills. No one has been able to actually test myself. Naruto can but he cares too much for me not to go all out. You asked Naruto when we talked why I smelled like cats. You remember?" Yugito said, "I remember that. He said perhaps he might tell me sometime why." Ino said, "The reason I smell like cat is very simple. It's the one reason why I am actually looking forward to this test. It's the same reason I know you contain Sibi, not Nibi. Naruto told you that Nibi was in Makia. Well when she did she gave me her power and I took her place. Yugito suddenly grabbed her head as yellow chakra started to gather around her and her features started to change. Her nails and claws extended and her eyes became slitted. Two tails spun out of her back and she started growling. Yugito while on all fours assuming the tiger fighting stance and said, "What lies you speak, human?" Ino sensing the rising power and hearing her voice quickly changed into her demon form and assuming the same stance and said, "I speak no lies, Sibi. If you doubt me, test my power for yourselves. Only rules are you cannot use any hostages or hurt anyone outside of the arena." "Deal," Sibi said, "deal," and with that they slowly started walking around in a circle, not taking their eyes off the other. Their tails swaying behind them. One made of chakra, the other made of flesh. Both watching and looking for a flaw in their stance or something to use as an advantage. Tenten said, "What's going on and why did Ino do that?" Naruto said, "It's all about honor. Ino wishes to honor Nibi's sacrifice and as a show of respect to Sibi she laid it all out for her. I am glad Gaara got rid of that spy for us before this happened." Tenten nodded and they both looked on. As they watched both Ino and Yugito stop circling and drawled back with their butts in the air and their arms out in front of them with their nails in the ground ready to pounce. And if by some unspoken command they both jumped into the air to attack each other. Nails digging into flesh and their legs trying to wrap around the other in dominance. As they landed they both took off at amazing speeds trying to get behind the other in this fight for supremacy. All cuts healing almost instantly. One would pounce and the other would roll with it or jump out of their way. Their tails used to make split-second changes. Anytime one would get close enough they would try and strike the other. It looked more like a dance than a match. But those who watched it knew that one wrong move would be possible death. Kurenai said, "Now that is a cat fight." After both landed from another Tide Cat slam they landed and backflipped away and threw a kunia. Both meeting in mid-air with a clang sound and flying away. Yugito started doing seals and said, "Raiden, Dragon no Jutsu," and a dragon of lightning charged toward Ino. Ino started doing hand seals and said, "Sweden, Suiryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon bullet technique," and a small water dragon collided with the lightning dragon cancelling each other out. Yugito then did some signs and said, "Raiden, Bunshin," and 5 clones appeared and charged Ino. Ino jumped back and said, "Cage Bunshin no Jutsu," and 5 clones appeared and charged the other ones. Yugito and Ino both stopped for a moment panting and Ino said, "Let's finish this with our most powerful attack. The one left standing is the winner." Yugito nodded and they both started doing hand seals and Ino said, "This one's for you, Naruto." Reverse harem no jutsu, and Ino transformed into Naruto with only a puff of smoke around his private as well as 10 others all in a different pose. The blood started flowing. Yugito, Hinata, Sakura, Tenten, Haku who was part of the medical team in case of an emergency and even Kurenai were sent flying back with blood loss. Ino released the jutsu and said, "Double knockout," and passed out. Kakashi who was laughing his SS off said, "You had to teach her that, didn't you?" The third said, "Naruto, I thought I declared that an S-class jutsu." Naruto said, "You did, but the only people who know it are me, the 2 copycats over here, Ino, and your grandson." The third paled and said, "You taught Konohamaru." Naruto said, "I will be when I see him Aegean." Yugito started to stir and said, "What happened? I thought I saw a blonde god and passed out." Naruto said, "A god? You're the 4th woman to tell me that." Zabuza said as he saw Haku was still out, "Someone revive my daughter for me and the matches for the finals will be as followed. Shikamaru vs Tamaral EAF vs Suna. Gaara vs Sasaki Suna vs Leaf. Neji vs Lee Leaf vs Leaf. Naruto vs Sanray Leaf vs Iwa. Shino vs Hesero Leaf vs Iwa. You have 1 month to prepare. Good luck." Naruto said, "Kakashi, can I talk to you a moment?" Kakashi nodded and Naruto said, "You planning on training Sasuke, right?" Kakashi nodded and Naruto leaned forward and whispered, "You teach him Chidori and I will kill you. I don't care what happens to me afterwards." Kakashi said, "Don't worry. I remember your warning and I won't give him anything over AB rank jutsu." Naruto nodded and Kakashi said loud enough for everyone to hear and said, "Sorry Naruto. I will be training Sasuke." Naruto said, "Damn, I guess I can have my family help me. Thanks anyways." Sasuke looked smug and Naruto smiled and created a few clones and had one help Ino and another to help Tenten. He walked over to the Hokage and said, "So what do you want to do about Yugito?" The Hokage said, "I suppose go ahead and take her home with you and get her settled in. Inform her sense first." Naruto nodded and walked over to Mela as a clone helped bring Yugito over and said, "Well, it looks like this will be farewell for Yugito if she still wants to go through this though. I will let you have the rest of today to prepare what you need and say your goodbyes. I will meet her at the Hokage office tomorrow and help her to settle in at noon. Also, if her father wants to send messages just have them directed for our Hokage and I will have ours direct any she wishes to send to him." Mela smiled and said, "You are going to have one interesting family. Alright, I will have her meet you there tomorrow." And they both left and Naruto took his two wives home to check on his third wife. When Naruto got home, Yukie was sitting on the couch and said, "So how did it go?" Naruto sighed and said, "We have a bunch of interesting matches. Ino and Tenten both had double knockout matches. Zabuza stopped Tenten before her and Choji accidentally killed each other and Ino fought Yugito to a standstill." Yukie smiled and said, "So what's the verdict on her? Are we getting a new sister?" Naruto said, "Sister." Tenten said, "Well, we figured that since we want each other to feel as equals we would call each other sisters. Even though we have fun with each other and you." Ino said, "It helps us each realize we don't have to fight over you." Naruto smiled and said, "I like that. So are we all still in acceptance of her?" Yukie said, "Yes. So when will the wedding be?" Naruto said, "I think it should be tomorrow before her sensei leaves so she can report it to her father." Ino smiled and said, "Sounds good. So which room do you think she would want? The one on the left of Yukie or the right?" Yukie said, "I think we should let her pick. We won't be using them much anyways." All the girls laughed and looked at Naruto and he said, "I think we should wait till tomorrow and recover our strength. I know we have not done it as a group since our first night, so I want all 5 of us to enjoy it." "Okay." The girls looked sad but agreed. The rest of the day everyone just lounged around and rested from the hard day. That night as the girls laid in bed with Naruto they were all awakened around 5 a.m. by the sound of crying and a restless Naruto. They all tried to comfort him and awake him from the dream that he was having with no luck. Suddenly a scar appeared on his body right above his chest. Each of the girls watched as the scar appeared mysteriously and then as it disappeared before their eyes. Naruto finally stopped moving as seemed to rest. Ino got out of bed and signaled the other girls to follow her. They each left the room and Ino went to Shizune's room and knocked. Shizune woke up and put on a bathrobe before answering her bedroom door. She saw all the girls standing there and said, "What's wrong?" Ino said, "I am not sure but I think we need to talk about Naruto for a minute. Something just happened and we're all worried. Can you get Tsunade and Jiraiya and meet us downstairs? Well, make some coffee." Shizune nodded and went to get the others and the girls started making coffee. When everyone made it to the kitchen Shizune said, "So what's this about?" Yukie said, "I don't really know how to explain it. We were all in bed and were awakened by the sound of crying and Naruto appearing to have a nightmare. We tried to awaken him but it would not work, but then this scar appeared above his heart on his chest and then slowly disappeared." Ino said, "What's bad is I have seen that scar before." Everyone looked at her and she continued, "He received that wound from Sasuke a little over 2 months from now. It's where he was hit with the Chidori." Tsunade said, "I see. I will have to ask him what he was dreaming about but I believe I know what's happened." Tenten said, "What?" Tsunade said, "If my guess is correct he was reliving a painful memory and the pain must have been so bad both physically and emotionally that when he remembered it, his body here actually thought it was happening and started to protect and repair itself. Tell me Ino, what do you remember about Naruto's condition when he received that wound?" Ino thought for a moment and said, "Well, you performed surgery on him to the point of exhaustion and he was in a coma for a few days. He finally awakened and was released from the hospital the next day after that. The same day he was released though he left the village for 3 years on a training mission. When he came back he was different. He had his emotional mask on and appeared happy but now that I think back about it he actually seemed depressed." Tsunade said, "What was Naruto's relationship with Sasuke?" Ino thought and said, "Him and Sakura both sometimes when talking about Naruto's relationship with Sasuke was that of a brother." "Why?" Tsunade shook her head and said, "That pretty much confirms my guess then. The attempted murder and betrayal he must have felt from Sasuke was enough to emotionally damage him when he recalls that." Yukie said, "Is there anything we can do to help him through it?" A voice from behind them said, "You already have." Naruto stepped through the door to the kitchen and sat down at the table. He looked at them and said, "Sorry for worrying you all. Thanks for caring for me. You're right about what my dream was. I was having flashbacks of the Valley of the End battle in my head. I guess my talk with Kakashi yesterday brought it fresh to my mind. Tenten walked over to him and hugged him and said, "We tried to wake you but you would not awaken. We got worried and just wanted to make sure you were okay." Naruto nodded and said, "Thanks. So who wants breakfast?" And he created 5 clones that started making breakfast. Everyone sat down and enjoyed the breakfast that was served to them. After they got done, Naruto, who was already changed for the day, got up and headed toward the back door. Shizune said, "Where you heading to so early, son?" Everyone looked at him and he smiled a small smile and said, "I am going to talk to Dad. I have not done it in years," and then flamed Shushin away. Everyone looked at each other and Ino said, "Naruto always goes to the Hokage Mountain when he needs to work some stuff out on his own. He always sits on his dad's head, even though he did not know it was him at the time. I remember hearing a villager once say that he went up there to curse his defeat to the man." Everyone looked sad and Shizune said, "Was his life really that bad?" Ino said, "To tell the truth, I really don't know how bad it was. I was like most people toward him till I really got to know him, and even when I have been inside his head and saw some of his memories, I could not see the worst ones. He has the best mental defense I have ever seen. Some of his memories are so bad that the doors are solid black. White doors are good, solid black are worst. The memories are anywhere in between those two colors." Everyone looked a little sad about that. Ino said, "I have not checked since we came back, but I am sure that with all of us here now and the changes that have happened, he is finally starting to be happy. As long as we work toward that goal, everything will be okay." Tenten said, "I think you're right, Ino, so are we ready for another woman in this house?" Yukie said, "Personally I think it would be nice having another person not from here. Makes it where I finally can ask questions about travel instead of answering." Everyone laughed and Jiraiya said, "So are you going to do any more movies? Because I was approached the other day to have one of my books made into a movie and I think you would be good for it." Yukie said, "Tempting but no. The only man who will see me not is our husband." Jiraiya sighed and then Tsunade hit him over the head and said, "Quit being such a pervert." Naruto was sitting on top of the Hokage mountain thinking when he felt a presence behind him. He stood up and looked to where he felt it and said, "Come on out. I know you're there." Sanrei said, "I see your detection skills are quite good, Kazama. It shall be fun to see if you can track me when we battle." "Oh, don't worry, I am not going to fight you yet. I want your death to be viewed by your entire village." Naruto said, "You're quite sure of yourself?" Sanrei said, "Yes, I am. See, I know all about what happened to your blonde lady friend during her fight." Naruto said, "Oh, enlighten me then." Sanrei said, "See, the seals I have on me are quite unique for a Jinchuriki. Instead of having to request power or information from him, and sousing just a little bit into my body, I can actually control or torture my demon. That means I can use as much of his power as I want or need. I know that little blonde of yours is now a full demon. Yonbi was quite helpful in informing me about it. I just wonder if your village knows the truth about her." Naruto said, "That's an interesting theory you have there." Sanrei said, "Don't tempt me, Kazama. Once I destroy you, I shall take care of your little family also so that my country does not have to deal with the likes of you again." Naruto looked right at him and his eyes changed to blood red and said, "You have to get through our match first." Sanrei said, "Don't worry. It will be easy for me. Yonbi told me that you are still a Jinchuriki who is just being granted a little power to so the Kyuubi that is inside of you is not thought of weak." Naruto thought, so Yonbi lied to him to make him underestimate me, huh? I will have to thank him. Unfortunately I won't be able to do free him Aegean in this world. And said, "That may be true but you will have to find out for yourself when we fight." Naruto then looked at the sky to see what time it was and said, "Prepare hard boy, I will see you in a month," and disappeared into flames. Sanrei said, "Don't worry Kazama, when we meet I will make your death slow and painful," and he turned invisible and left. Naruto appeared inside the Hokage's office and the third said, "I will never get used to you doing that." Naruto said, "Well, it is kind of unique. Anyways, I wanted to let you know tomorrow I will be leaving until the day of the finals." The third said, "And where do you plan to go? You know I have to approve leaving the village." Naruto said, "True but I plan on doing some intense training. I am going to Makia for it. That away even with the lose of Kabuto, Orochimaru still has a spy network and find out more than he should." The third sighed and said, "I understand. Please." A knock on the door interrupted him and he said, "Enter." Yugito walked in with her sensei, followed by Ino, Yukie, and Tenten. Naruto turned to them and smiled and said, "So, has everyone decided?" Yugito said, "Actually, there is something we need to talk about before we go any further." The third said, "And what would that be?" Yugito said, "When we were going through my former teammate's belongings after he lost his life during the tournament, we discovered something shocking." Naruto said, "And that would be?" Mela said, "We discovered orders he was to kill Yugito on the way back because as soon as we were out of the country the council under the leadership of former Kage-san was to impeach and execute her father. So as it currently stands, the non-aggression treaty that I have is now void since it can't be verified. And because of this Yugito and you have no legal obligation to marry. I must return my cloud, but I request for Yugito political asylum, and as her legal guardian I will still give the scroll of just you for her to be allowed to stay. If she returns she will be killed." The third sighed and said, "Abnu, get me Hiyash now." About 10 minutes later Hiyash appeared and said, "Am I to be a witness for the wedding, Hokage-sama?" The third said, "Not exactly. We have a new problem." Hiyash said, "Really? Enlighten me." The third said, "The ninja that Neji killed during the tournament had a second set of orders from the Council of Cloud. They were orders to kill Yugito. The council under the leadership of the previous Kage, who I know your hated, set it up to remove and kill the Raikage. Yugito-sensei has no choice but to return to Cloud, but she has asked for politica asylum for Yugito and is willing to give us the jutsu. She says that she does not force the marriage issue. Since you have a vested interest in this, I thought you should be advised in your opinion." Hiyash said, "Well, as far as I can see it's no different from the original plan. We lose a non-aggression treaty, but that was not much of an issue anyways. As for the marriage, though they are not obligated, the Kazama heir still needs one more child barring wife to please the council. I say as long as neither party objects, just keep the arrangement like it was." The third nodded and said, "I was under the same impression. How does both parties stand?" Naruto said, "I choose to go with the decision of my family on this matter. From what I know of Yugito as a person I agree, but it is not only my decision, and I heard a saying once. Keep the wives happy." Everyone laughed and Yugito said, "You don't have to do it. I have a little money to live on for about a month and I can do missions to support myself." Ino looked at the others and said, "We already decided we rather have someone like you for Naruto and us. So let's have us a wedding." The third said, "Well, if that's the end of it, let's begin." Naruto sighed and started patting his pockets and Yukie threw something at him and he caught it. He smiled and said, "Thanks." Mela gave Yugito a hug and said, "I must be going. I hope you are happy here," and left. Yukie said, "It would not do good for you to forget the wedding ring." The third said, "Short or long?" Naruto looked at Yugito and she said, "I hate traditional, short." The third smiled and said, "Do you, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Yes." Third, "Do you, Yugito?" Yugito, "Yes." Third, "You may give the ring." Naruto placed the ring on her finger and channeled chakra into it, and it did the same as the other rings, and suddenly the tattoo appeared on Yugito's finger and everyone in the office disappeared. Aegean. When everyone could see Aegean, Naruto looked around and moaned before he said, "Man, I was not planning on coming here till tomorrow." Hiyash looked around and said, "Where are we?" Makia, Hyuga. Naruto turned and said, "I thought that was a one-time thing." The man that walked up said, "Kit, as the lord of the lands here you should realize anything official such as a marriage or births of your heirs will be displayed for your people to see, and we will automatically know when they happen because your mark on your ring finger is like a messenger. If certain events happen we are notified, and remember to show the people your royal form. I suppose this young lady is your new mate. I sense Sibi in her." Naruto sighed and released his demon form before looking at Hiyash and said, "I will explain when we return." He nodded and noticed Ino changed also. He filled that away to talk about later. Naruto said, "So Kyuubi, anything I should be made aware of?" Kyuubi said, "Shukaku arrived safely and Nibi will be out of recovery soon. Her wounds healed from the process, but she has been so exhausted they won't release her until she gets the rest of her strength back." Naruto said, "I plan to come here tomorrow to start some intense training. If you can, I need a Kenjutsu master and anyone who can help with jutsu that work great against Iwa or speed opponents. Because of a new development the mortal world won't have a Yonbi for long. His vessel is cruel and I refuse to help him like I will the others." Kyuubi nodded and said, "Well, I can see you have a lot to explain, so just finish the ceremony and I will announce the marriage and you can be on your way." The third said, "Kiss the bride." Naruto softly kissed Yugito and Kyuubi said, "Announcing the marriage of Lord Naruto Kazama and Yugito Kazama." And with another flash and everyone was in the Hokage office. Naruto sighed and sat down and said, "Okay, who first?" Hiyashi said, "Exactly what was that about, and was that really the Kyuubi?" Naruto said, "That was the spiritual world called Mela. When you die you will go somewhere there." "Yes, that was the old Kyuubi. To answer your next question, I am the new Kyuubi. I am no longer the container." Hiyashi said, "Exactly how did that happen?" Naruto said, "Well, as far-fetched as it sounds, and since I know you saw Ino true form, I will tell you we both are the last two survivors of the Hidden Leaf village that was destroyed. Kyuubi offered us a deal to come back in time. Normally it would not work, but he sacrificed his life in this world and made me the new Kyuubi. During the process his mate Nibi, who was trapped in a pocket dimension on the brink of death, gave Ino her powers and made her the new Nibi. We informed the Hokage and have already been changing things to make the leaf stronger to the enemy to come, however a few surprises have happened." Ino said, "An example of this would be Naruto's real name was never released, and so Iwa and Cloud never came to this Chunin exams. The two former mist nins that we now have originally died. Also the cage bird seal was another big change we had to make. Orochimaru wiped out 90% of the Hyuga clan by learning how to activate that seal. The seal you now have was the answer you and Jiraiya came up with during the aftermath. We told you we knew about the Sound and Sand village attack that coming, that's how we knowed and are preparing for it. We could not stop Sasuke from getting the curse seal, but hopefully we can stop his defection." Hiyashi nodded and said, "I see your point to keep it as quiet and the need to change certain things. I am curious about what else came with your new titles." Naruto said, "Immortality, more chakra, super healing, better control and heightened senses. We can still be killed but we can't die from old age. All of the vessels that I helped to save from a group after their powers will also become like us, including Yugito, but after a standard mortal lifetime we will all leave this world to live in Makia. I know that may seem like I am using you, but it's the only way to save the lives of all the vessels and most of the world." Ino said, "At least Hinata did not almost die at Neji hands this time." Hiyashi nodded and said, "So the events of the past can't be repeated, correct?" Naruto nodded and said, "Yeah. I may sound like I am playing God, but I can't control everything and I am only helping correct the mistakes so they won't happen again. I trust I can have you secrecy and discretion in this, Hiyashi." Hiyashi nodded and said, "Yes, you have it. You seem to be an honorable person and you have helped me get my family the way I wanted it." Naruto nodded and Ino said, "So what's this about you going to Makia tomorrow, and were you planning on telling and bringing us?" Naruto said, "I was going to tell you when I got home. I was not going to do it until I had a meeting with Sanrei. He made it clear that our match will be a death match, and if he beat me he was coming after all of you. From what he said he can use his full power, so I will have my hands full." Yukie started crying and said, "You're not going to leave us?" Naruto sighed and said, "No. I am not leaving you, I just wanted to get stronger so I can protect you all, so I was just going to do some extreme training away from prying eyes." Yugito said, "Well, if no one minds, I would like to see my new home. I have had a long day after discovering about my home and dad and would like some rest." When Naruto and his little harem got home, Yugito said, "Wait. Here are the jutsu scrolls one promised," and she handed them to Naruto. Naruto opened them and read the jutsu and said, "These are some pretty good ones, but I am weak against lightning, so I will put them in the library with the rest of the clan scrolls, and yes, you can look at any of them." Naruto then went to the library and put the new scrolls with the other jutsu but put a kanji for lightning on them. He then went to his room and took a shower. Yugito said as Naruto walked off, "Where is my room going to be?" Tenten said, "You want to sleep near Naruto, right?" Yugito said, "Yes, if possible." Yukie said, "Follow us, we will show you which rooms are still available. We usually share a bed with Naruto but keep her personal stuff and cloths in separate rooms." They showed Yugito where she could stay and she chose the room on the left of Yukie. Yugito sat down on her bed and said, "How come none of you got married today?" Tenten said, "We already are." Yugito was shocked and said with a blush, "So that means you have already done it." Ino said, "Oh yeah, we already done it together and it was great." Yugito smiled and said, "So what is the family like? I know we talked a little at the ramen stand, but I don't really know anything about you." Yukie said, "Well, my name is Yukie, I am the actress in the Princess Foon movies and I am the princess to Snow Country. Currently I am a diplomat for my country with Konoha so I can be near my hero Naruto and someone who made me believe in myself." Tenten said, "My name is Tenten. I am a weapon mistress. I am the only child of my parents and they own the Wolfclaw weapon shop. If you ever need weapons, go to our shop. I married Naruto because he is sweet and kind and is an all-around great gut. Ino said, my name is Ino, and like you heard, I am the new Nibi. I am also what people call a mind walker because I have the ability to enter other people's bodies and either review their memories or possess their bodies. Naruto and I have a unique connection because of the life we had to lead once. Naruto is a great guy who always tries to put the needs of others before himself. He has saved my life on several occasions and is a terrific lover. Yugito said, well, my name is Yugito. I am the only child of the Raikage unless he is dead. I am also a Taijustu specialist, but it looks like I am equal to Ino. I am also the vessel for Sibi and I have about 10 jutsu in my arsenal. I agreed to marry Naruto because he seems to care about what happens to me and is willing to give me a chance even when he does not have to. Ino said, well, if Naruto is leaving tomorrow, I think we should give him a reason to come back quicker. Yugito said, what are you talking about? Tenten smiled evilly and Yukie said, follow us. When Naruto came back out of taking a shower, he saw all 4 of his lovely wives sitting on his bed and nothing, and he noticed the door to his room was closed and locked. Naruto smiled and said, why do I suddenly feel like a slab of meat? Ino said, well, since we have already had you all once, we decided that you should welcome Yugito the same way to did us. Naruto said, really now, and I suppose you just want to watch. Tenten said, I am sure you can think of something to keep us busy. Naruto said, I might have something to keep you busy, but I want to do something first, and he walked over to his dresser and opened a drawer and pulled out 4 blindfolds. He then walked over and said, I want you all to put one of these on. Yukie said as she put hers on, this is getting exciting. As the last of them put one on, Naruto created 7 Kujbunshin and said, now we are going to play a little game. I have created 7 Kujbunshin, and if you include me that makes 8 of us. There will be 2 of us pleasing each of you, but none of you will know who is the real one until you earn your reward. Are all of you ready and willing? Each of the girls nodded and Naruto said, Yugito, are you ready for this since this is probably your first? Yugito said, it is my first time and I am as ready as possible. Please be careful. With a nervousness in her voice. Naruto said, okay ladies, here we go, and listen closely to your body needs and the ones talking to you. Yugito. The real Naruto bent down and slowly slid his lips to Yugito's and started to rub her stomach, sending shivers down her spine as he kissed her more passionately every second. He softly slid his tongue into her mouth and hit her teeth. He did it again, but she opened enough for him to enter her mouth and touch her tongue. She started to fight back with hers but slowly gave up and went submissive to him as he explored her mouth. He then brought his hand up and softly touched her right brace, and she eeped as he did it. He then broke the kiss and went down and started sousing on her left brace, as his clone went up and started to kiss her and took over playing with her right brace, as Naruto sent his hands down slowly trailing her stomach and then into her pubic area. Yugito clamped her legs together as a reflex and Naruto brought his hand around her legs and up to her SS and pinched it softly. He then left her brace, and started kissing his way down toward her puss, and she still had her legs closed. He smiled as he got there and reached for the back of her knees and found she was ticklish there. She jerked her legs apart to get away from his tickling. When she did, he took his chance and slid his mouth to her clee and flicked it with his tongue. Yugito flipped her legs on his shoulders to allow him access to do that again, and he started taking her with his tongue, giving her the best feeling she ever had. She started to moan and the clone that was playing with her brace whispered in her ears, if you like this just wait till the main event, and nibbled on her ear. Yugito could not take it anymore, and as she finally reached a climax and snapped her legs around Naruto's head. Naruto smiled at this as she tried to take the life from him from pressure. He leaned forward as much as he could and ran one of his fangs across her CIT for a bit of pleasure and pain. Yugito immediately let go and submitted to him. Naruto picked her up off the bed and kissed her as he carried her over to the desk and whispered in her ear, last chance to stop Yugheim. Yugito said, you stop now and I will be a widow. Naruto smiled and sat her down on his desk and turned her over so that she was on her stomach. He then grabbed her hips and slowly slid into her from behind. He pushed till he hit her barrier and drew back a little and thrust forward as he pulled her hips toward him. Yugito hissed and grabbed both sides of the desk, and Naruto waited until she released her nails from it before slowly pulling out and going back in. He then started a tempo and used her hips to give extra momentum. It did not take long for her to climax, but Naruto kept pumping and she quickly climaxed a second time. Naruto finally had enough and released into her. When he finished he had the clone that started with him start Aegeon to eat her out but at a slower pace. Yugito was in multiple heaven. Naruto after leaving Yugito walked over to the others and watched as each of his clones ate each girl as another passionately kiss her. Naruto waited a moment till he was ready Aegeon and looked to see who was close. Ten. Tenten was enjoying herself when she felt a set of arms pick her up and carry her in his arms. She then heard, "Enjoying yourself Tenheim." She said, "Yes," softly. She felt the arms carrying her lean forward and fall a little like he was sitting down. The arms then swung her around and slowly pulled her to where her legs was on each side of him. They then picked up her butt and pulled forward as she felt his dick slide into her. He then said, "I noticed during our first time you like to be active so I am going to let you this time," and he lightly slapped her on the SS with his dick still in her. She jumped a little and felt a new sensation enter her body. She fell back down slowly and started up Aegeon but not as fast, and after she came back down Aegeon her butt was slapped Aegeon and she jumped faster this time. Naruto then said, "That right, just like that," and slapped one last time. Tenten not wanting to be spanked Aegeon speeded up and felt a growing pleasure in her body. She then felt him started to help her and thrust upwards as she was coming down for added pleasure. She then leaned forward and found his lips and put hers to his. She became distracted by the kiss and slowed down and received a light slap for that. She pulled back a little and bit his bottom lip softly as she broke the kiss. She then leaned back as a pair of hands grabbed her sides and she felt even more of him enter her. She finally released screaming his name. After she calmed down she felt two pairs of arms help her off the one she was straddling and lay her on the carpeted floor. She felt one enter her and slowly fuck her as she wrapped her legs around him and the other one soused on her nipples occasionally biting them. Naruto smiled as he watched Tenten being fucked like no tomorrow. He looked over at his last two wives and saw Ino was being fucked doggy style and had another clone pinching her nipples. Ino felt a someone crawl between her arms and the one playing with her nipples stoked. She then felt a pair of lips meet hers and she kissed them passionately. The kiss broke apart and she heard him whisper, "I love you Inoheim." Ino said, "I love you also." She then felt him crawl up in bed and felt his dick slap her chin. She pulled back a little and as the tip passed her lips she slid it in her mouth. Ino started moving up and down and the clone fucking her sat his pace with her. If she speeded up he did also, if she slowed so did he. She decided to sat a pace of pleasure and after a few minutes of this the clone pulled all the way out and Ino stopped and started to pull up to see why he stopped. Big mistake. Right as the tip was about to come out the clone entered her hard forcing her back down on the head and muffling her protest in one motion. Ino stopped and gagged a moment as she had taken the whole dick in her mouth. The clone started pumping her like there was no tomorrow. Her arms started to get weak in the force of being entered and the rhythm was enough to send the one in her mouth over the edge and come into her mouth. She had no choice to swallow. She really did not care because she had 3 orgasms back to back and each reaching a new high. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head and the one pumping her from behind grabbed her arms and pulled her back up off the dick in her mouth and onto his D more. Ino awoke from this and started screaming, "Yes, yes, foo. Me hard Naruto, Yukie." Naruto smiled and looked at his last wife and saw she was being babbied by her clones as the one who was pumping her was going nice and easy just enough to make her in bliss. Naruto rolled over to her and started to finger her while the clone pumped into her giving her more pleasure. Naruto then leaned forward and kissed her passionately and then whispered, "Yukie Heim, I love you and I can't wait to raise our children together," and then nibbled on her ear as he continued his work on her CIT. She soon climaxed and slowly fell asleep. Naruto kissed her once more before getting up. He looked around the room and saw the carnage. Yugito was leaning against the desk unable to walk and being held by 2 clones. Tenten was laying on the floor panting with 2 clones rubbing her sides. Ino was sprawled on her stomach on the bed purring and Yukie was still passed out. Naruto then had his clones pick up the girls and carry them to his bed. He then dispelled them. Naruto walked around the bed and kissed each girl as he removed the blindfolds and put them then pulled the chair he used earlier with Tenten over and sat on it and put his feet on the bed. Each of the girls finally either awoke or quit panting and Yugito said, "What the hell are you? Some kind of S**X god stamina freak? How do you know how to do that?" Naruto said, "Stamina freak, yes, S**X god you tell me. As for how I know how to do that, I may hate his books but my grandfather sure has some good ideas." Yugito said, "Who is your grandfather and what books?" Ino said, "Jiraiya of the Sanins and Orthor of Ika Ika Paradise." Yugito said, "Wait, is he also the Orthor of Adventure of an Heir?" Naruto slapped his head and Tenten said, yes. Yugito said, so that's how he described all of your bodies so well. You're all in volume 3 of the series. Everyone stopped and looked at her. Suddenly a scream of Ero Sanin broke through the sound barrier Ino put up and echoed throughout the village. In the hot spring by the house Jiraiya said, oh shit. Tsunade looked at him and said, what did you do no? Just then a flash of flames appeared on the water and someone holding a Rasengan in his hand starts screaming, I am blind, I am blind. Just you wait bastard, as soon as you get close on I am going to kill you. I told you not to put me or them in your books. Suddenly Jiraiya felt Ki pointed at him and Tsunade said, Jiraiya, and punched him sending him flying through the air screaming. Sasuke looks up from the mountain he is climbing and said, there sure is a nice full moon out today. Kakashi looks from his book and said, you say something Sasuke. Sasuke said, I just was talking about the nice moon I just saw. Somewhere in the sound village Orochimaru hears someone scream and said, I am going to kill that Kyuubi brat for taking my playthings away. Just then Jiraiya flies through the window and lands on Orochimaru's desk with his Nod SS in the air. Orochimaru said, I see you finally came around to seeing things my way Jiraiya-kun. Jiraiya looks around and when he hears this punches Orochimaru in the head and jumps out the window and summons Gambunta and said, before you say anything, if you get my virgin SS out of here into safety I will buy you all the sake you can drink for a week. Gambunta not looking a gift horse in the mouth starts to jump but Manda appears with Orochimaru on his head and Orochimaru said, Jiraiya, I am the master of snakes. Gambunta pales and said, oh hell no, and hauls SS as fast as possible. What's bad is he really is hauling SS. Jiraiya's. The only problem was he was heading in the wrong direction to head to Konoha. Instead he was heading toward Iwa with Manda right behind them. A few hours later inside the borders of Iwa, 2 patrols of ninja see Gambunta and Manda running toward their hidden village. They give chase trying to catch up. The Tsuchikage was in his office looking outside at his village and starts to sip some tea and spits it out as he see Gambunta with a nah. Jiraiya on his head jump through his village and then sees Manda following with Orochimaru on his head holding a banner that read, have SS, will follow. He then goes back to his desk and grabs a scroll out of the trash and puts his seal on it and writes, I agree to war only if we destroy sound also. I fear for the men of my village from Orochimaru. And then summons a ninja and said return this to the messenger. Jiraiya finally gets his bearings and said, Gambuto, we're heading deeper into Iowa territory, head south and we will hit Suna and then we can cut across to Konoha. 3 hours later and both Bozas being resummoned they were passing through the desert and Tamari said, I think I have been getting too much sun. Gaara said, if you are then so am I. Kankuro said, hey isn't that the Kyuubi guy's grandfather? Gaara said, I must need sleep. I am delusional. Kankuro said, if we're going to be delusional at least let it be that Haku chick. I would like to see her in a marriage. Gaara said, don't talk about her Aegean like that. Tamari said, oh does my little brother have a crush? Kankuro said, no it's not a crush. You weren't there at the time so you don't know. Tamari said, no what? Tamari was laughing and said, that is funny. Gaara said, Tamari I asked Kankuro this already and he said it was bad, but what is blue balls? Tamari shut up and glared at Kankuro and Kankuro said, you're a woman so you should answer him. Tamari grabbed her fan and screamed, Kamataki, and chased after her brother. Gaara sighed and said, perhaps I can ask that Enko woman, she seems to speak her mind.